So thank you for making time out. My name is Robert, and I come from the software world. So if you're in the hardware world, some of the things that we do in the software world can be a bit confusing. But it's also a bit confusing to me, given that I'm a bit older. So I worked in Lagos from 2004 to 2011, and then I left. And when I worked, it was, you come from school, you get a job, you do your job. Maybe there are one or two tech conferences that happen in a year that you attend, right? But then all of a sudden, things like trying to get, so companies started having what they call developer relations, and it's like customer relations. So the thing with customer relations is you try to keep your customer happy. You also try to get feedback from the customer, take it back to your product team, and improve your product. So if you are an LG, for example, your customer support will tell you these are the sorts of complaints that people are making about whether it's their fridge, their TV, or whatever. So you know that the next product that you ship, you should have fixed all of these problems, right? So for software companies who their customers are developers, right? So if you look at like a Microsoft, Windows customers will be, there'll be customer relations. But if you use Visual Studio, then it's not really customer relations, it's now developer relations. Now, when you think of customer relations, they are showing you, oh, did you know that your TV can do this? Did you know that your TV can do that? Now, when you look at developer relations, you need to say, oh, did you know that you can use this, you can use Visual Studio to do this. Here's how to do this in C#. Here's how to do this here. So a whole world was created around developer relations, and then also around communities, which is where, oh, even though I don't work for Microsoft, but I've used Visual Studio, and here are a few things that I've learned. So people started writing, started talking, and doing all of that. So the ecosystem evolved pretty much. And as a result of the evolution of that ecosystem, companies like Andela came along and said, hey, while we're waiting for government to create an enabling environment and to create the jobs that they keep promising every campaign period, we are going to help people to get jobs that are not in this environment. So is there a place where there are jobs and they don't have enough people to do the jobs? And they identified that opportunity, and then they said, okay, so we have people who are busy watching MTN Project Fame and things like that. Let's stop them from watching MTN Project Fame. Let them come and learn for a few years and then get remote jobs. And they got quite a bit of traction because it started from Nigeria, spread out to a few African countries, because they were always looking for top talent. It was a race to the top. They managed to get funding from Microsoft, from Facebook, from Google. So they were doing Andela learning communities, and they were pushing the bar. And as a result of it, Africans all over the continent have been able to get jobs. Some have got remote jobs, depending on the format. So Andela has got jobs, you remain where you are, but we'll get the jobs in USD. We'll also pay you in USD or USD equivalent or whatever. Some have left and got the jobs directly. Some have started their own companies off of it. Some have even relocated, right? So that has worked for the software ecosystem. There's still a whole lot of work being doing at a point in time, they said, okay, we have a lot of people at the entry level. We don't have enough people at the mid-level. How do we train people for the mid-level? What are the skills that they need to know? However, when you look at the hardware space, we might have one or two efforts going on, but it's not really well known. It's not public, it's not out there. So today, you'll find people who are studying architecture, mechanical engineering, sociology, telling you that they want to get a job as a software person when they finish school. And the reason for that is enough noise has been made, so they know that there are jobs there. And really, all people want is, can I get an honest job that puts food on the table for me and for my family, right? Regardless of what I went to study. Again, because sometimes you want to study X, the university says this is where we have space. This is where I don't know if they still do that, but as Africans, we're an amazing breed, right? So sometimes they just push you somewhere and go sort yourself out. They don't even care whether there are jobs there, right? And so in the end, you just have a degree, and they push you out. So people know, you'll see it in the sense that European companies now know that they can hire in Africa. American companies know that they can hire in Africa. What's the real problem? How do I sort out compliance with government? How do I pay you? So the remittance side of things. And companies have sprung up to fill that need. There's Remote, for example, that sorts that out. There's Deal. I know a few people that their contracts come through Deal and they get paid through Deal and things like that. So in terms of the software world, they're like pretty good. But when you come to firmware, you don't find European companies coming to Africa to say, hey, we're doing a recruitment event to try and hire firmware engineers, right? Maybe if you carry yourself as a firmware engineer and you go to Europe, then you can apply and get a job. And I know a few people that have done that. So I have, off of my writing, off of my speaking and stuff, I have been involved with the developer ecosystem for a while, but in the data space. So machine learning, data science is what I've been known for a few years now. Part of the Google ecosystem. So I started off from the Facebook ecosystem. So if you're online, sometimes you might hear some chatter about Facebook developer circles. Eventually joined the Google developer groups, and they have their own ecosystem. And the ecosystem is massive. So they're there outside of schools as Google developer groups. They're there inside of schools as developer student clubs, where they try to bring learning content to students and all sorts of things. And then they have something at the extreme that they call the Google developer experts. And experts are people who are high up on the career path. So like, this thing, it's one thing to talk about something or to teach something, another thing to have practical experience, right? So for example, if you're lecturing in chemical engineering in a university, it's one thing to say, oh, this is how a refinery works, this is how this works, this is how this works, this is the whole theory of it. It's another thing to say, oh, I actually work at a refinery, but every Friday I have time off to come and lecture you, right? So that's experts correct. Are at that level where, you're hands-on, you're doing all the work, but then you're also talking about it, you're writing about it. So how did I end up in the hardware space? Because I don't have a hardware background, I have a software background. How did I end up in the hardware space? What happened was, again, because of the tight collaboration with Google, Google has this machine learning framework that's called TensorFlow. and it's huge, it's massive, it goes into a lot of products. So unlike some places where slap AI and slap blockchain and disturb everybody, right? It is, how do you refine this product and make it better? And you see that with YouTube. So if you use YouTube, you have recommendations. So you finish watching one video and they try and recommend something that might interest you. So over time, if you are the only person using that account, the recommendations should be pretty good. You see that with Spotify, you see that with Google Maps, search engine. So Google search is something that is heavy on machine learning, and all of those things are powered by TensorFlow. Problem with TensorFlow is that it requires a lot of resources, which embedded systems do not have. So TensorFlow also migrated to the phone, which you wouldn't particularly call an embedded system, but it's a RISC processor that's on it. So most Android devices, and even the iPhones actually, all have an ARM-based processor. So whether it's MediaTek, it's Snapdragon, one of the Chinese processors or whatever, or Apple, they're all ARM-based, RISC, Cortex-A based processors and things like that. So TensorFlow was reduced into TensorFlow Lite, and so TensorFlow Lite now enabled machine learning on mobile devices, right? And then 2 to 3 years ago, they now said, hey, how do we enable machine learning on devices on the edge, devices that are constrained, whether by processing power, by memory, by power requirements. So basically sub-milliwatt devices. And so they came up with TensorFlow Lite for microcontrollers. And so that is what dragged me to the opposite end, because TensorFlow Lite for microcontrollers is what enables Alexa to wake up from sleep. It's what enables Google Home to wake up from sleep. So any device in your house that is voice activated is enabled by machine learning on the edge. So that's what brought me to that world. And in that world, you have a lot of things, right? They've got wearables. So like you can have how does your smartwatch detect your heart rate, right? So there are sensors for that, but you have machine learning optimizations. How does it detect when you're walking or when you're running or when you're sleeping? All of those things. So that's machine learning. So that's really what brought me to the embedded space. Now, in the embedded space, the question that you want to help people answer is there a career opportunity in this space, right? It's one thing for you to come and tell me to learn something, but where are the jobs? Who's working in that space, right? Now, on the other extreme is when you tell people come and start something, they say to you, how do we get people to do the jobs? So if you tell someone to start an airline somewhere, the first question is going to ask you is, who are the people that will work in the airline? So suppose I have money to put down. I can buy planes. I can build an airport. So I have money to build an airport, but I'm not going to come and build the airport myself. Do you have people there who will build the airport if I give you money, right? If you tell someone to build a school, the question they're going to ask is, are there teachers that can employ there? Or will I have to go to the UK to recruit teachers and come and put here? So again, when you talk about people building things on the continent versus going to China to buy everything, right? In Lagos now, there's a push for smart homes, but most of those devices are coming straight from China. There's no intellectual property that we're injecting into it. So most people just buy, come and install, configure, go to sleep, right? Is it that we can't build them? We can build them. But if you tell someone build, he's going to say to you, okay, fine, give me the people. One example is POS developers are embedded systems engineers, but almost every company that recruits POS engineers has a permanent job opening because they never get enough people. They are always looking to hire, right? Most places. So that's really why I am here by way of introduction, because I think it's rude to just jump into a conversation without a proper introduction.